Hey, soldiers, look, the media is lying to you about the CBDC. We're going to get into that. You are not going to be able to believe what the nominee for an important government position had to say with regard to controlling your money. Okay, it's going to blow you away. Basically, this person admits that it's not going to be your money. It's going to be doled out to you at the whim of the government. This is the danger of the CBDC. This is why we have to educate people and let them know what's going on. That is why I need you to go ahead and hit subscribe, enlist, become a soldier of finance. Also, hit that thumbs up, okay? Let the algorithm know that this is information you think is important and you want other people to know about it. I want you to share this video too. Share it with a friend, share it with a loved one, tell them to share it. People need to get educated about the CBDC because if we don't, as Americans, we will wake up one morning and our money will not be our own. Our financial destiny will not be up to us. As you will see, this is not hyperbole. We're going to get to this nominee and what this person had to say in her own words, all right? We're not going to read it. We're going to have her say it in her own words. Now, go ahead and hit subscribe. I will salute you in the comments if you let me know you did subscribe. So we've got a network, a state mouthpiece, NBC, right? Nonsense, buffoonery, and coonery. They're out there carrying the water for the administration, or more so for the Fed, because the Fed is the one that wants this type of control. And remember, the Fed spans administrations. Now, we've got an executive who's pretty much asleep at the switch, doesn't know what's going on. Anything they put on his desk, he's going to sign it, okay? So we've got to rely on the Congress not authorizing this CBDC, okay? And you're going to hear how anybody, this is what's starting to be framed out there, anybody who goes against the government's and the Fed's CBDC, central bank digital currency narrative, will be demonized. This is what the media does. If you don't play ball with these leftist policies, then you're going to become an ist, okay, or a phobe, all right, or something that basically puts a scarlet letter on your head. And we see this happening to two people. One's a Democrat, one's a Republican. Both have warned about the dangers of a CBDC. The very real reality, like I'm not even going to say likelihood, I'm not going to say possibility or potentiality. It is a certainty that if the CBDC is instituted, it will rob us of our freedom. That's exactly what it's designed to do. All right. So let's jump into that, and we're going to hear first. We're going to examine this article from Nonsense, Buffoonery, and Coonery, also known as NBC Media, the news. Then we're going to listen to Saul Omarova tell us how she really feels. Okay, I'm going to let her tell you what she thinks about what you should be able to do with your money. Desantis and RFK Jr. misconstrue Fed's digital plans in warning of government overreach. Okay, that's a headline. The subheadline is Florida's GOP governor and the anti-vaccine activist, both seen as potential 2024 presidential candidates, mischaracterized two Federal Reserve proposals as efforts to restrict Americans' purchases. It's going to do more than that. It's going to do more than just restrict our purchases. And look how in the sub-headline, how they were characterized. First up, Florida GOP. So to a lot of people who are not objective, oh, it's evil. It's a Republican talking. Then they got to do something with RFK because he's a Democrat. So they say an anti-vaccine activist, when in reality, the real way that you should characterize Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is as an environmentalist. Okay, now he might be rather rabid in his zeal, but he is an environmentalist. He's worked on those initiatives for decades. Okay, he's obviously very passionate about it. So if you were being fair to him, you would have NBC would have characterized him as an environmentalist. Okay. But we're starting off. This is the flavor. You gotta, demonize him every chance you get. because the attempt here is to destroy their credibility when they're warning you against adopting this CBDC. Now, some people are so far gone that they could stop reading that Florida GOP governor and anti-vaccine activist and say, oh, well, in that case, I'm all for the CBDC. Take my money, take my freedom. There's no way I'm going to agree with an anti-vaxxer and Florida's GOP governor. All right, so as the Federal Reserve looks to modernize banking, modernize banking, who could be against modernization? Two potential 2024 presidential candidates have accused the central bank of seeking to use a proposed digital dollar to, quote, control, unquote, Americans' finances, although Fed officials have committed to no such plans. Of course, they're not going to come out and say, yeah, we committed to controlling America's finances. Yeah, we did that. Of course they didn't. All right, we're going to tear this apart. Florida Governor Ron Desantis alleged last weekend that a Fed-made digital U.S. dollar would let the government block transactions like buying a rifle or filling up with too much gas. He is 1,000% correct. A digital dollar would give the government that power, and we're going to see in a moment, we're going to see someone say, yeah, okay, this is what we want to do. We want to, control your ability to spend. DeSantis added, speaking at a Pennsylvania conference on Saturday, they're going to try to impose an ESG agenda, referring to private sector policies aimed at advancing environmental, social, and governance principles, which conservative lawmakers across the country have been pushing to curb. Of course they have, because ESG doesn't make any money, okay? We've seen that. They're trying to embed ESG in all kinds of businesses and all throughout the economy. So it's bad for business. We have reported on this, okay? I'll tag it somewhere, but if you just search the channel ESG, you'll find it. We break it down, okay? Facts is what we do here. So they're trying to say, these guys are anti-ESG, okay? You don't want to mess with that. It is ceding the power of our financial freedom to a central bank which does not have our interest at heart. He is right. The central bank wants to control the central bank digital currency. Now, there is a internal battle going on between the Fed and Treasury. They're trying to figure out who's going to control it. The Treasury is saying, hey, you control monetary policy, but you don't control the issuance of cash. We should do that. These accounts should be set up here at the Treasury, not the Fed. So there's a little back and forth between those two. Either way it's, worked out, it would be bad for us. The Republican governor, who has been widely floated as a potential primary rival to former President Donald Trump, has introduced legislation in Florida seeking to ban the use of any Fed-issued digital currency in the state and has called on other states to do the same. We just reported on that yesterday for me. And you now at this point, or whenever you're watching it. The Fed is readying the FedNow initiative, which aims to shorten the time it takes for banks to send funds to other banks for a planned July rollout. Separately, it has also been exploring the possibility of issuing a digital version of the dollar that households could readily use instead of cash. The central bank issued currency will be used in digital wallets offered by the private sector, including by consumer lenders, i.e. your credit card company, okay? All right. One thing I want to point out here is JFK Jr. As a Democrat and Ron DeSantis as a Republican. Think about this. This article could go into examining why you have bipartisan agreement on this concept, okay? This is rare. Okay, we got a Democrat agreeing with a Republican on this. Why is that? But no, instead they carry the water for the Fed. The Fed is exploring the idea to keep up with countries that have moved to implement their own digital currencies, such as China. Yeah, they are trying to keep up with China in more ways than one. But officials have made it clear that they are not committed to following through on issuing one. A lie. The Bank of International Settlements, which the Fed is a signatory to, they have come out and said that their members are going to all adopt central bank digital currency. Okay? You're not going to have China with one, Russia, Spain, Portugal, Brazil. Everybody else got one but us. Okay? That would be nice. All right? Especially considering this fact. There's a major difference between our Federal Reserve Bank and the central banks of other countries. That difference is this. Private banks own the Fed here. In other countries, like the Bank of England, for example, that's owned by the government of England. China's People's Bank of China is owned by the government of China. So we do have a unique kind of setup here. But as you'll see in a minute, that may change as well. There's some dialogue going on about that. The Fed is exploring the idea, okay, and they want to basically issue that digital dollar, but they're saying that they can't do it without authorization from Congress. That is correct, okay? So that's the stopgap. So you might want to educate yourself further by looking through the archives, and we've done a lot on this, so that you can call up your congressman, congresswoman, senator, and say, hey, look, this is why I don't like this. We haven't decided that this is something that the financial system in this country would want or need. So that's going to be very important, Powell told Congress on March 8th. Last year, the Fed issued a white paper analyzing the potential pros and cons of issuing a digital dollar. The paper makes no mention of any intention to throttle transactions. That paper may not, but you just wait. Now, let's get to Kennedy, okay? DeSantis' comments came within days of remarks by, here we go again, anti-vaccine activist Robert F. Kennedy, okay? Look at how they're re-emphasizing that, because they know that a large portion of their readership is committed to this idea that they sold them on previously, okay? How'd that work out? Fed-issued currency would, Robert F. Kennedy tweeted on Wednesday that a Fed-issued currency would, quote, allow the government to surveil all our private financial affairs. Truth. And they would have the capability and not do it. Is that what, NBC is trying to convince us of? They could enforce dollar limits on our transactions, restricting where you can send money, and freeze your assets to limit your spending or spending to approved vendors if you fail to comply with our arbitrary dictates, i.e. vaccine mandates. Look, they told you if you didn't get the vaccine, you're going to be fired from your job. So they already demonstrated a willingness to get between you and your money based on what they want you to do. Okay? They have already set themselves up as the arbiters of your behavior and set in place a precedent that will affect your bottom line, your money, if you don't do what they say do. Kennedy, who filed paperwork this week to run for president as a Democrat, has been a longtime opponent of COVID-19 vaccination requirements. He publicly apologized last year for comments suggesting that Anne Frank had been more free in hiding from a certain group of peoples who you do not see anymore than people facing U.S. vaccination policies during the pandemic. In his remark Wednesday, Kennedy referred to the FedNow central bank digital currency, appearing to conflate the two plans as a bank-to-bank initiative. So now they're trying to impugn his credibility by saying he doesn't know the difference between the CBDC and FedNow. Well, I do. And FedNow is the underlying architecture to a CBDC. This is the FedNow is what comes first so that the CBDC can actually work on top of the FedNow. But NBC is saying that the FedNow is designed, for example, to speed up how quickly an employer, now this is where they try to incorporate you into it by being somewhat empathetic. FedNow is designed to speed up how quickly an employer's bank sends payroll direct deposits to employees' bank accounts. So now you're supposed to think, oh, well, without this, I might experience a delay and get my paycheck. Don't let them fool you. A Fed spokesperson declined to comment on the two politicians' allegations, but clarified that FedNow is not related to any potential central bank issued digital currency. Now, the question that NBC should have asked is, well, would FedNow make it easier to lay a CBDC architecture on top of that transaction capability? And see what they said about that. You got to be real specific. NBC's never going to do that because they don't want the government. They're working with them to conceal the truth from you. Later Friday, the central bank tweeted information about FedNow, emphasizing that the service is neither a form of currency nor a step toward eliminating any form of payments, including cash. What Desantis is getting wrong is the idea that there's more reporting if there's a central bank digital currency. Again, they have the data, all right? You don't think? Sure, they might start out and say, oh, we're not going to do that. You don't think subsequent administrations would? You don't think subsequent iterations of the Fed would, especially when we are losing dollar hegemony across the world? Asked about the source of the claims that a digital dollar would be used to limit purchases of guns or gas, DeSantis' press secretary, Brian Griffin, said the track record of the establishment throughout COVID and under this administration speaks for itself and leaves plenty of room for concern. Obviously, central bank digital currencies provide an avenue for controlling entity to push an agenda. Amen, brother. Okay. Look. Oh, here, let me read you this because this is another little technique they use. Watch how they link this. China's digital currency project has featured prominently in arguments against an American CBDC, with some related conspiracy theories suggesting a government push to develop Chinese-style social credit system. Again, they told you they won't fire you if you didn't take their medication, okay? So they've already demonstrated the predilection. In some quarters, cryptocurrency enthusiasts have suggested that decentralized digital tokens could serve as a defense against a state-backed digital currency. But they're in the process of destroying the central bank, the private cryptos, so making way for the CBDC. Others have proposed low-tech ways to counter the purported threat. An article was published Wednesday on the far-right website InfoWars, owned by conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, claim that FedNow, these people don't even realize how much of a parody of themselves they really are. Anyway, Jones claimed that FedNow, quote, would effectively control how people spend their money, and praised a tweet by Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican from Georgia, saying we should go back to the gold standard, not digital currency payment system. So you're supposed to laugh that off because Marjorie Taylor Greene said it. I know somebody who is like that. Marjorie Taylor Greene could walk down the street and say, hey, you're on fire. And this guy would disregard it because he loathes her so much and is so myopic when it comes to, the Steelers versus Ravens game that they got you playing out here with party politics. All right, look, I promised you that we were going to hear from a nominee, Saul Omarova. She was the nominee to be the comptroller of the currency here for the United States of America under Biden. She had some very dystopian ideas on what could be done with a CBDC. Let's hear her in her own words.
So that's that's where my paper is kind of taking off and kind of trying to run with that ball and see how we can push the idea of creating Fed accounts, digital dollar deposit accounts that would be universally available to everybody at the Fed, to kind of push it a little bit to the limit and to imagine what would it be like if instead of being just a public option for deposit banking, this would be actually the full transition. In other words, there will be no more private bank deposit accounts and all of the deposit accounts will be held directly at the Fed.
Okay, so that first part of what she said, very clear, okay, easy to understand. She believes that all accounts should be held at the Fed. There shouldn't be private banking anymore, okay? So that's what I was alluding to earlier when I said there could be a change in the wind in terms of who owns the central bank here in America. We could be moving toward the paradigm that other countries use. So she clearly said it, okay? And she also alluded to the fact that this would not be a voluntary thing. This would not be optional, okay? This would be a transition. Push it to the limit. That's what she said, right? Well, she wasn't done.
And there are very interesting implications from that thought experiment. For example, with the much more direct and proactive tools of monetary policy, like helicopter money, which is, considered radical primarily because economists really do not know how to manage the issue of what will happen in the inflationary environment when the central bank needs to contract the supply of money. How is it politically feasible for the central bank to effectively take money away from people's accounts? And so in this paper, I try to figure out a mechanism that would actually achieve that goal functionally without draining the money permanently from people's accounts. And we'll see if it works, if it doesn't.
Has NBC heard that? Again, this woman was the comptroller of the currency. Now, she didn't get nominated. She didn't pass muster. But the fact that she was nominated telegraphs the direction that the government is okay going in. Okay? She said that, this thing could work out such that the government could go ahead and, contract your money. NBC just said that they wouldn't do that, right? Throttle is the term they use. Yeah, they will. And they're planning to do just that. They're looking at all possibilities. The reason behind, and she spoke to this, why that's attractive to the Fed is because you could contract the money supply by throttling our ability to access our own accounts, okay, giving us spending limits, and then you would not have to raise the interest rate. So Wall Street, which we are, but the big banks, big moneyed interest would not see an increase necessarily in interest rates because the Fed would have a new tool to control monetary policy, to tighten monetary policy. And that tool would be just throttling the accounts of folk like you and I. So what have we established here? MSNBC, them too, but NBC in this case, they're like the devil. They're liars. I believe we've exposed that. Let me know how you think, what you think we did here. Do you think that this CBDC is something that you're willing to go for? Do you see it as a problem, or do you see it as something that, you would say, hey, look, whatever, man, just let's get with the program here. And the government knows what's best for us. Listen, I want you to watch this video. This is the video we did that talks about how Desantis wants to ban CBDCs in Florida. Now, it's not as clean cut as you might think. Although I agree with the concept, check the video out. You might come away from it with a different view. Guys, I'll talk to you soon.